All right, let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Don Cherry Grapevine podcast. Being the dog days of summer, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to run a Don Cherry's Grapevine television show with Dad interviewing the great Gordie Howe. The Grapevine show started around 1983 or 84 and ran for about 13 years. And Dad interviewed all types of athletes, mostly hockey players, but we also interviewed snooker players and boxers and even Smoking Joe Frazier one time. Some football players, baseball players. But it was always great when Dad interviewed some of the legends, and Gordie's was a good one. Now, at this time in Dad's career, he was just starting in television and was really a rookie. And what Dad had to do was he had to say, this week on the Grapevine is the great Gordie Howe. And he couldn't get those lines out. And we'd done it in front of a live audience. And when he would screw up, people would laugh, and Dad would get a little bit more flustered. And Ralph Mellenby, who was the executive producer of the show and was executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, and maybe one of the most important and influential producers in sports overall in the world, he took Dad aside, and there was a picture of Blue, and he said, Don, just look at Blue and just pretend you're talking to Blue. That was the trick. Dad then could turn around and say, Blue, this week on the Grapevine, we got the great Gordie Howe. We shot 2 shows a night, and on this particular night, we had Gordie Howe, and the second guest that night was going to be a sportscaster that was famous in Southern Ontario, Dick Beddoes, in the 80s. He wore crazy clothes like Dad and had a bowler hat and was a pretty controversial character in the sports media world back then, and he was the second guest. So Dad talked to him as well. So without further ado, here's Dad with the great Gordie Howe.
Well, Blue, tonight we have Gordie Howe, Hall of Famer, 26 seasons in the National Hockey League. I love the guy, but was he mean? I'll tell you, he was one of the meanest hockey players I've ever seen. Mr. Elbows.
Grapes is talking to old Blue. There's lots of heroes from the sports world too. So when you want to have a good time, come on down to the Grapevine. Come on down to the Grapevine. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Don Cherry's Grapevine.
Ooh. Right over here, bedfellows, Mr. Dick Beddoes. Bedclothes, they call him. Bedclothes, not bedfellow. He's my bedfellow. He's all right. What a guy we got on tonight. I loved it. I tell you, he really did hit me there. I know what other guys feel like now.
Well, I'll tell you, Grapes, I think this is my most exciting night. Gordie Howe. You know I love the guy. He's a living legend.
I'll go along.
Now, what about Mark and Marty? They're not bad.
Listen, Mark probably one of the best defensemen in the league. Marty pretty good. He did well for Boston last year. They gassed him just like me. Let me tell you a story about Mark, though. You know, he was with the WHA. Never liked the WHA. I was an NHL guy all the way. Yeah. So he had a chance to come to the Boston Bruins, right? We almost had him. But he said he was going to go to the Hartford Whalers. So a reporter come up and said, what do you think of Mark Howe going with the Hartford Whalers? I said, you know, someday he's going to have kids, he's going to have grandchildren. And they're going to say, Daddy and Grandpa, where did you play? He could have said the Boston Bruins. Instead, he's going to say, I had to play for the Hartford Whalers. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute, I'm not through yet. So we have the first exhibition game against Hartford, and I'm thinking, oh, I got to walk across the ice. Easy. I better send the Bruins out first, and I can get across, and Gordie won't come out because I think he's been all on television down around there. So I'm halfway across the ice. All of a sudden, who comes out of the end? Gordie Howe. I can't go back, I can't go forward, and he comes right at me. I said, I'm dead. He's going to kill me. This guy's going to kill me now. curtains for me. He come up with me elbow. He's here, Grapes. Take us old guys gotta stick together. I'll help you to the bench. I'll tell you that. Tell you. Ooh, tough guy. I thought he was going to hit me like he did back there. Oh, now, Blues, this might be our best Blue movie.
This is what I heard.
I'm telling you, Blue did a job like you couldn't believe. She's got it. Now, Blue, run that Blue movie right now. Let's go. Gordie
In the
Howe.
summer of 1946, a shy young man from Saskatoon was preparing for a career in professional hockey. Young Gordie Howe was going to Detroit's Olympia to take up his position on right wing with the mighty Red Wings. And before it was all over, he would become perhaps the greatest athlete of all time. In 26 NHL seasons, number 9 played in 1,924 regular season and playoff games. He won 6 Art Ross trophies as scoring champ and led the league in total goals 5 more times. He scored an awesome total of 2,010 career NHL points on 860 goals and 1,141 assists. Gordie led Detroit to 11 Stanley Cup finals, and he and the Red Wings won it all 4 times. Over his 26 NHL seasons, Howe registered an astounding total of 21 All-Star selections. In 1971, after Gordie's first retirement, the Red Wings retired his number 9 sweater, and a year later, the NHL waived the customary 3-year waiting period and inducted Gordie into the Hall of Fame. But it was only beginning. Howe came back to play with his boys, Mark and Marty, while leading the Houston Aeros and the Hartford Whalers of the WHA. In 1979, Gordie rode triumphantly back into the NHL when the two leagues merged. In 1980, he retired again in Hartford in an unprecedented ceremony, became the second NHL city to retire the sweater of number 9, the incomparable Gordie Howe.
Well, I'll tell you something, Grapes. Blue certainly did a good job on that one.
You think Brewer bailed out there Dickin when he was going in the corner? Now, don't you go away. We'll be right back with the great Gordie Howe. Don't you go away.
When you want to have a good time, come on down to the Grapevine.
Great Gordie Howe. Good to have you here, Gordie boy.
Thank you, sir.
Woo. Wonder I didn't make it the NHL. One game. Okay. Now, Gretzky signs. He gets a yacht, shopping center, and a car. What did you get?
I got a jacket, and
That's all?
I'm very proud of that jacket. It's hanging in my restaurant, which is really, after 26 years of professional hockey, I don't think I have this much in my place.
Well, you know, it's famous. They all give it to me all the time. All right, now what are you doing now? Like, what's you know, I know you're traveling around and everything like that, but what are you doing right now?
Okay, basically, I'm assistant to Howard Baldwin, who's the general partner of the Hartford Whalers, and which leaves me a little ice time, very little. But I also go, you know, to Board of Governors meetings and that activity. I like it compared to what Detroit had for offer me. At least I'm learning. And
Why did you leave Detroit?
well, I had to. It's basically it was a dream come true. I wanted to play with the youngsters, Marty and Mark, and there's another one, Murray, but he was a little too young. And the reason I retired or gave it totally up because it was total confusion at the time and in Detroit, and then the idea of my hanging on for until they become of age to play the game, which was 20, they found a loophole in the rules, and they basically picked Marty and Mark up, put them in WHA, and then Bill Dineen come along and offered me my dream, and I grabbed at it. And then there was another factor called money.
Yeah, well, money always helps. We all have our price, even
we
you.
see eye to eye in
Yeah.
that one.
You had a great story why you left Detroit. They give you a job, something about mushroom. You were like, what was that? I thought that was pretty good.
Well, I stole that from I think he was a coach of the soccer team here. And he's explained that nobody ever heard of his sport. He said, because that's like the mushroom treatment. They put you in the dark and every now and then come in and throw manure on you.
Okay, I thought you'd be a great coach. How come, you know, you'd never coached?
People can get fired coaching.
Don't tell me about it. Tell me about it. No,
Yeah,
really,
no.
I thought that, you know, you'd get into it, give it a try. Anyhow, you never...
Well, I like the specialty coaching. I really do. Where I get an opportunity, if I see something obvious is wrong and something can help the club, I'll go out and personally work with the youngster.
Do you go on the ice with the Hartford?
Mm-hmm. I do that, and that prepares me for some of the Masters games, and it helps.
I know we have one thing in common, that you used to work when you were young on construction.
Right.
And I see the guys now, they lift 9,000 pounds of weights, and you know, then they lose that awful fast. You know that. But in construction, it builds you up. I know you used to lift cement bags.
Everlasting. I could lift 4 bags with 80. I think 86.4 pounds per bag. So it was just it's repercussion, or whatever I want to say it. Get my mind coordinated with my lips down. I'm going to be in great shape.
Listen, how about? I heard that you lived at the Olympic. Now that's really loving hockey when you sleep there.
Yeah, the first year, that was during the war, and there was no place really to stay. And the first professional practice with the Detroit Red Wings, I was late, and I was sleeping actually about 15 feet from the rink. And I was in a little cubby hole. When right across from where you dress as visitors, there's a little cubby hole there, and that's exactly where it was. And
nice.
the noise on the boards woke me up, and I ran down and got dressed.
You were scared. Listen, I think it was 61, I was at your training camp. Do you remember me?
I've been playing a long time now. You want the truth?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember myself back there, I'll tell you honestly.
No, I was there for a cup of coffee, and I think they shipped me to Sudbury. Oh, well. Now, everybody calls you the meanest guy. There's nothing wrong with Sudbury.
I would have if you dressed the same then.
I know, I didn't have quite the taste I have now, actually. Now, you've been called the meanest guy in hockey with the elbows. Now, everybody that played against you, you give them a little shot. Is that true?
If I could. I do. Actually, now, to explain it, I don't know why I did some things. I did find out very early in my career, the first game I played against Toronto Maple Leaf, I went in the corner with Gus Morrison. He came up with an elbow and took 3 of my front teeth out.
Well, that does wake you up.
It does, and I decided, well, if that's part of the game, I should be there first. And I loved that little footage. Carl went east, didn't he, on that one?
I saw you coming, I'm going to get him, and all of a sudden he said, Gordie, you want the puck? Take the puck. But Bond stood there. See, you knocked Bond, he'd always stand there. I got an interesting story about Bobby Bond.
Well, Bond just laid down, he said, go get him.
Yeah, he wanted to get him. Sorry, Carl. Anyhow, how about when Bond went to Detroit? And I don't know how it happened, but I remember the story back then. I was in the minors somewhere, that he asked you how much money you were making, and you pick up the story from there.
Well, I got to thank Bobby Bond. Number one, he's such an honest individual, and we become very, very good friends. As a matter of fact, competitive-wise, we're good friends. And when we went out for lunch one evening, he said, "Do you mind if I say something?" I said, "No, be my guest." He said, "You're stupid."
You're stupid, right off the bat?
Well, yeah, I said, we all know that. I said, well, what is the reason? He said, because, he said, I've floated around this league a little bit, and he said, I'm making a lot more money than you are, and you're the laughing stock of the whole league. And basically, when I understand, folks, when I went up to talk contract, until I got my wife Colleen to do it for me, it was the best move I ever made in a game of hockey. But I'd go up there and I'd say, well, I'd like to be, if I'm supposed to be the best on the team, pay me accordingly. And they said, don't worry about it. So at that time, I think there was 3 guys making more money, and probably one of the reasons why I was mad at Carl Brewer, he's making almost twice as much.
No matter, you were trying to get him there.
Yeah, but it was my fault. I should have had a little more pride and a little stick to it, but I just loved the game of hockey, and whatever they paid me, I thought that was a going concern. Do you have any animosity
towards Jack Adams for that? Do you think he took advantage of you?
No, Jack Adams, he was a master of all hockey, as we all know. He was always on your back constantly, and when it came to bonuses, I just simply mentioned to him, I went upstairs one time just before I went to Florida and needed a little extra cash, and I said, Jack, you said if I had a good year, I'd get a $1,500 bonus. He said, did I say that? And I said, yes. And he said, call the guy up and he says, I want the kid to have $1,500. He's that kind of a guy. Yeah. But when it come down to the hardcore,
yeah. When you were signing?
He just, yeah, as a matter of fact, when I asked for a jacket, he held it up 2 years.
All right, I remember, well, I don't remember, but I remember seeing pictures of Lou Fontinato. I know you got this brought up all the time. But what happened? How did that get started? That's got to be the best fight ever. And Louis wouldn't think so, but you pick it up from there.
Well, Louis, I was with Louis here not too long ago, and he asked me if my ribs had healed since the beating I took. And I said, what side, Louis? So
yeah, your fist healed.
Basically, what it is, now that's I think that's one of the common errors some people make. You do not study who's on the ice at the time you're playing against them. And I just so happen to know that Louis is out there. And the play started really maybe months ahead of time when I was leaning over with the idea if I can get a piece of Louis or the puck, Del Vecchio will have a shot on net. And when I was leaning over, he saw me there and he came back and wrapped me in the nose. you know, that blurs you up a little bit, and I started swinging. We both got a few minutes, and I'm dabbing here with a split lip, and he's saying, "What's the matter with your lip, Gordie?" You know, and
nice.
that was an interpreter telling me I couldn't understand him. Right?
Yeah.
So after that, then I found myself identical. You ever been walking down the street and say, "I've been here before"? Well, I was skating down there. I said, "I've been here before." And when he came back, I went this. I missed a hand, caught his ear, and cut it practically. It was hanging.
Just happened to cut it in half.
Yeah.
Now they give you a shot at dawn if you ever did that.
That's right. But when he come out with the turban on, and I start, "What's the matter with your ear, Louie?" It was my turn. So when there's a fight started out between Red Kelly and Eddie Shack behind the net, and I'm leaning on the net enjoying this, and I thought, oh, he's out here. And as I turned around, he had dropped his gloves at the blue line and was coming in. I just pretend I didn't see him until I took the first swing.
Nose like this. But he's a good guy, giving it all, and you know, he's a hard guy.
That is exactly why. That's why when we had a tribute dinner out in Vancouver, British Columbia, I asked personally if they'd invite Louie out. Yeah, you know, he was
That's
a policeman.
the least you could do.
That was his job. We paid him, and you know,
you
a few
pay him,
sandwiches.
and listen, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. Who was the greatest goalie you've ever seen?
Well, Dick Beto was a super individual, and he speaks right from the shoulders, and he came out with a proper name when I was listening to the program when he said that Terry Sawczak by far, and that's a man I played with and against.
He was a great guy, too.
Just
Lots
super.
of heart.
It's hard. He was, to a lot of people, Terry wanted to be alone. Say if there's 200 people in the room, he wanted to be alone. He just picked the wrong places to be alone.
Yeah, right.
And that was his makeup of a human being, and we can't hold anything against him for that, but he was by far the best I've ever seen.
He's talked to me too. He was one of the few guys, and yourself. I remember you said hello to me, and when we were in the minors, believe me, you think I'm kidding, and we were like the dregs of society. And when a guy like Gordie Howe would come up and say hello to you in the morning, boy, your heart would sing, and Terry Sawczak, and I just loved it. But I want to ask, I know this is going to be tough for you. What's your biggest thrill in hockey? And now I know that all the things you've done.
Well, that's not too hard because I thought about it and dreamt about it so often, and the chance of playing professional with the two youngsters, and that was in WHA. And then added to that when there was a merger, and I got an opportunity to play in Hartford, by the way. You're knocking that nice city for a while.
Well, Hartford, I'll tell you, they don't even have an airport, but that's all right. That's wrong with that.
They drop you in.
Yeah.
But I got an opportunity to play with them, and there was an injustice there. Jack Kelly, who was general manager at the time, sent Marty down when my dream was right at Grasset.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I ever spoke up quite verbally
I remember.
and said, "I'll never ever forgive you if something happens to Marty, myself, or Mark, that we won't achieve this." But at the end of the year, my thoughts were really backed up for the fact that Marty had broke a wrist.
Yeah.
And we didn't know if he was going to make it back. He made it back, and we got back in the lineup. But
and he played good for Boston last year, too.
Yes, very well. But
Steady.
Blackburn did us a great justice. We opened up a game in Detroit, and they put us all on 3 as a line.
Donnie Blackburn, I can't understand why he left it in. No. When I was there, the one thing I remember when you played, I couldn't get over your short hockey stick. Why did you have such a short hockey stick? I'm telling you, it was no bigger than that.
Yeah, it's up to about this high. And when I changed crests, I really had a rough time after that. But basically, the reason for that, I have long arms and no shoulders. That's why I use the elbows. That's the excuse I had. But I like everything in front of me. Wow. And then I used to change hands, and it's awkward to change from that position. So it's just a flip of the stick.
Somebody said it's faster to get up in somebody's face, but we won't go into that. This is Jimmy Loftus right here.
Hi, Jimmy.
Gordie, nice to meet you again. I wanted to ask you about, like, in your days, as compared to players today, how would you assess them or rate them? And
bigger, richer, and not necessarily in that order, but I used to be one of the top 5 big people in the game of hockey. And then one of the last years I played with Mahavlich brothers and Peters. And I'll be honest with you, the old Boston Gardens where you used to walk out of your dressing room, you have to step up on that little step through.
Yeah.
I could take a little hop through there, wouldn't bother me, and the other guys are stooping. And there had to be 11 of them actually bowed through that, and they are much, much bigger, and not necessarily any faster, as Atlanta found it. But
hey, you'd have a tough time reaching them with your elbows now.
I left my feet to hit a few of them.
There's one other thing I wanted to ask you, Gord, while you're here, is your sons. Have you ever coached them, I mean, as regards giving them advice and everything and saying...
advice comes easy. We all know that. But yes, I did, particularly if they asked for it. We were never a family, I shouldn't say I, because Colleen was a great part of it. She drove them thousands of miles every winter to become what they are. But basically what we would do is, at say a hockey school, I'd teach them the fundamental basics of all the things, and then Mark would come up to me, for instance, they were playing Guelph, and he says, how do you lose a guy that's so close to you? And I said, he's doing a bad job if he can reach him with a stick, which is not to hurt him, but as soon as he anticipates a change, I'd reach over and give him a little hook and then take off, and he had enough speed to stay ahead of him. So, and then I did one particular day, I was forcibly let Marty in the garage, and I locked the door, and I said, you're going to shoot it my way, or else, you know, because he had that stupid flick bang thing.
Like my shot.
Yeah, but you could read yours. You know, but he would rotate it, and his passes would come flopping over to him, very hard to handle. That's the only time I had an opportunity to speak to some hockey families in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I basically told them you were blessed with two eyes and one mouth, keep one shut and the other two open, and let the kids enjoy the game.
Gordie, thank you very much for coming here. What a great guy.
The bigger they are, the better they are.
Take us home. Kenny Harris.
Grapes and Blue, Ken and Jimmy, thanking you for tuning in. Special thanks to our friend Gordie Howe.
Well, that was a great interview. You know, it was interesting to hear how Bobby Bond told Gordie Howe that he needed to make more money so everybody else could make more money. As they say, rising tide floats all boats. And the Leap and Lou fight with Gordie Howe, and if you're interested in that, you should look that up, because that was a very interesting story. It was all in, I don't know if it was Life magazine. There was a magazine that had Lou Fontinato in it. But the one thing I do remember about that, again, this was in kind of the mid-'80s, and Gordie would have been probably in his 60s, but he was just like an oak tree trunk. He was just a thick, big guy. And you could imagine in his heyday how hard it would be to hit him. Again, because he was solid as an oak. Well, anyway, that's it for this week, folks. Thanks a lot for listening. And as Dad always said, toodaloo.